This is a stone we are going to make today. To also make the stone at home, you will need acrylic paint, a brush, a medium-sized stone and some tools that you are going to use for the dotting. But we will come to this in a bit. A set square and a compass can also come in handy. The acrylic colors that I have used for the dotting are from the brand Camlin. I have put the link for them in the description, but basically any acrylic color will do. Just make sure that they have a creamy consistency. If your colors are too thick, you can just add some droplets of water. I have worked with only 3 colors for this design of the mandala, plus a black paint for the background. I used titanium white for some highlights and more importantly for the mixing, so that I get different shades of the same color. I really love to do that, only work with 3 or 2 colors, but utilize a variety of shades for them. Like that, the mandala looks very harmonious in my opinion. I've also proceeded like that for this design. I used a nice sea green, which is called Viridian Hue, and mixed it into 4 lighter shades of green. As the second color, I chose the complementary color of green so that we could have a nice contrast in our mandala. The red that I worked with is called Crimson Lake, and I mixed it into 2 different shades. Okay, great. Let's draw our attention to our canvas, the medium on which we will be creative today. You can choose any stone you fancy, but it should have a relatively smooth surface. Otherwise, the dotting can become very difficult. I am painting on a relatively small stone today. It is about 6 centimeters long and 4.5 centimeters wide. Wash your stone with soap to get rid of any dirt and let it dry before you continue. Alright, so before we will talk about the dotting tools, let's already prepare our background. Take a compass or something in a circular shape and draw a circle onto your stone. Mine is a little bit more than 2 centimeters in diameter. It should be placed in the middle of your stone. When you have done this, take a brush, any brush will do basically, and fill in your circle with black paint. Let it dry completely before you continue. The next step that I'm doing is optional. I have drawn some helping lines on my dried background, so it's easier for me to stay symmetrical, but you can also choose to draw freehand. If you want to utilize your helping lines, first you have to locate your middle point. The easiest way to do this for me is I take my compass that is still set on the size of my background and fit it onto the circle. The needle of your compass should hit your middle point. Then mark it with a pencil. Now you can draw 3 more smaller circles onto your black background. I will use them later to orient my design so it stays symmetrical. Alright, now let's add some more supporting lines. You will in total draw 4 lines all going through your middle point. Let's start with the first one. Take your set square, line up 0 with the center point and carefully mark the line with the pencil. I know it's a little bit tricky because of the curved surface of the stone, but with some practice I think you will get used to it. The second line we want to put in a 90-degree angle to our first line. Hold your set square perpendicular to your first line and fit the 90-degree line that is marked on your set square onto your first line. It should go through your center point. After this, add 2 more lines going through your middle point. They should be both in a 45-degree angle from the other lines. For this, fit the helping lines of your set square that mark the 45-degree angles onto your other 2 lines. 0 should be right at your center dot. Now mark the new lines with your pencil. When you have done this, we are finally ready to start with the dotting. Let's just quickly go through the dotting tools that I have used for the stone before we start with the actual dotting. I got 7 different sizes of dots for this design. For the smallest dots, I used a toothpick. For the other ones, I worked with 3 different dotting tools, each with 2 different sized ends. In this video, the smallest size will be called tool number 1. The biggest size will be dotting tool 6. If you don't have dotting tools yet, you can improvise with some self-made dotting tools. For example, you can use Q-tips without the cotton tip, old felt pens, erasers on your pencil, etc. Just make sure that you have 7 different sizes, including the toothpick, for the dotting. Alright, now let's start with the dotting. I started out with my biggest dotting tool, that is size 6, and our lightest shade of green, shade 1. First, we have to apply our big center dot right in the middle of our circle. For that, I dip my dotting tool size 6 into the paint. The upper half should be fully covered in paint. Then I press it gently onto our marked center. When I dot, I always hold my dotting tool perpendicular in a 90-degree angle to the stone. Otherwise, our dots might not come out even. Now, we should have a nice even dot in the middle of the stone. After this, we want to dot around our center dot. We do that using the same shade of green, shade 1, but this time we use a toothpick. We apply our first 8 dots onto our helping lines that we drew before. We try to stay very close to our center dot. After this, we fill in the gaps between these 8 dots with 8 more dots. For every new dot, we dip the toothpick or the dotting tool into the paint. After about every 3 dots, we wipe the dotting tool or the toothpick on a napkin to get rid of excess paint. Now, every dot should have a dot on the opposite side of the center dot. It is very important to get our first row of dots really symmetrical because they influence the symmetry of our whole mandala. Now we have finished our first row with 16 dots. For the second row of dots, I used turquoise shade 1 and changed to the dotting tool size 1, so a little bit bigger than the toothpicks. We dip our tool into the paint and press it gently in between the dots of our previous row, not directly above them. We apply 16 dots in our second row again. Before we continue with the third row, we go 1 shade darker with green shade 3, and we will change the dotting tool to size number 2. We dot this row in the same way as before. Always dot in between 2 dots of the previous row. Take new paint for every dot and wipe the dotting tool after about every 3 dots. Alright. Now create another full row of dots with green shade 4 and the dotting tool size 3. So now that this is done, we can finally add some red in our design. Red shade 2. So our dark red. For the next dots, use your dotting tool size 5, so 2 sizes larger than the previous row. Now we only create a dot in between every second dot of our previous row. Like this, you will come out with only 8 dots. In these gaps between our red dots, we will put 8 smaller dots in green shade 1. Use your dotting tool size 4 for this. Our next 8 dots will be placed just above our last row of green dots. Just leave a little bit of space between them this time. Use your biggest dotting tool, size 6, and red shade 1, the lightest red, to create 8 big dots for this row. So now we want to put a kind of white outline for our big dots. We will try to add several small white dots just on the outside of the dots, like a kind of envelope. For this, I go back to the toothpicks and white paint. Let's start with our dark red dots. Alright, you apply paint onto your toothpick and dot just above the red dot, right in the middle. Then you take paint again and dot down the right side of your red dot without applying any new paint. Like that, the dot should naturally become smaller because you are running out of paint. I managed to put 4 more small white dots on the right side. Now use new paint and dot the left side of the same dot. Just make sure that you put the same amount of dots on the right side as in the left side. Continue like that with all your dark red dots. When you are done with this, start adding these envelope kind of dots around the light red dots also. Also use white with a toothpick. I have added around 6 dots on each side of the light red dots. Cool. So now we are done with our basic design. What I'm going to add now are actually not dots, but dots that are changed into a kind of drop shape. For this, start out with dotting tool number 5 and green shade 1. Place a dot on the outer edge of your background above one of your dark red dots. Then quickly take a toothpick, add some green shade 1, and starting from your dot, kind of pull your dot down to form a spike. It should be pointing towards your center. Then, with help of your toothpick, form this into a teardrop shape. Add more color on your toothpick if you need. The upper side of the dot remains untouched, just the lower part is being modified. Do this above all your red dots. Now use the dotting tool size 4 and green shade 3 to add 2 smaller teardrops on each side of the large drop. Place them a little bit closer to the center than the large drop. Again, add a dot and pull the lower side of it down into a drop shape with the toothpick. Add more color if needed. Do this on each side of the big teardrops. Now we are nearly done. Lastly, fill in the empty space above our light red dots with a dot in green shade 4 using the dotting tool size 5. Now our design is finished. You can gently erase the pencil lines on our stone with the eraser, but only when the paint has completely dried. I really hope you like the design of the stone and the tutorial. Like and subscribe for more content every week.